Thank you so much for watching Landumc Goes There. Please subscribe and hit the like button and the bell notification button. The Love Boat asked you to come aboard, that they were expecting you. It was a floating resort filled with romance, short shorts, and B-list celebrities. For a decade, Aaron Spelling's cruise fantasy defied the critics and took real love-stuck viewers on mental vacations. It originally set sail in the spring of 1977, and it hit the high seas until 1986. There's not too many shows that have this kind of longevity, but it had such a wonderful cast that people just kept tuning in. The show is set on the luxury passenger cruise ship MS Pacific Princess, and it revolved around the ship's captain and just a handful of his crew, along with passengers played by guest actors in each episode, having romantic, dramatic, and humorous adventures while there. It was part of ABC's popular Saturday night lineup, which also included Fantasy Island until 1984. The whole thing is completely based on a book by Geraldine Saunders. That publication from 1974 was called The Love Boats. She was a former cruise director and hostess, and she turned her work experiences aboard these luxury ships into a bestseller. And passengers that you see on the show paid thousands of dollars to be aboard when filming took place. Those were no ordinary extras that you see milling about the deck during each episode. The fans could shell out dollars for tickets and set sail alongside the cast and crew. An example is when the Love Boat went to Hong Kong in Season 7, tourists paid between $3,300 and $8,500 for the cruise. Gavin MacLeod, Bernie Capel, and Ted Lang are the only actors to appear in every episode of the series. There are thousands of guest stars on the show, and dozens of regular cast members pass through the ship over the years, but only the captain, the doctor, and the bartender were there throughout all 250 episodes. By the year 2010, this famous boat had become too old and too costly to renovate and continue using as a cruise ship. When the owners couldn't sell it, they decided to sell it for scrap. They sold it to a Turkish company for about $3 million. Guest stars that show up on the series could earn between $1,000 or $25,000 for the show they were in. Most of them were not anywhere near $25,000, but an exception to this was Lana Turner, who was the 1,000th guest in the 200th episode. She was paid a whopping $25,000 for her work. There was even a celebrity dog that earned $1,000 for appearing in the show. Tundra the Wonder Dog was all the rage in the early 80s, even appearing in the hit movie Against All Odds. This white pooch appeared in the Love Boat episode called The Dog Show. It's pretty amazing that Gopher went on to become a congressman. After he gave up acting, Fred Grandy went on to represent his home state of Iowa as he served in Congress from 1987 to 1995. Laugh tracks became very unpopular in the 1970s and early 80s. During the 50s and 60s, they were used continuously to stimulate laughter for jokes on sitcoms. But Hollywood had grown tired of them, so much so that there were shows like All in the Family and Cheers that would announce at the beginning of the show that they were filmed before a live studio audience. This was the first show in several years not to be filmed in front of a studio audience, and still had a laugh track. When it was canceled in 1987, it was the last show of its type to use a laugh track. Isaac can be seen among the ship's crew, greeting passengers as they embarked. It was discovered by producers that only ranked maritime officers were allowed to perform such duties, and that being a bartender, Isaac was a civilian employee. Ultimately, producers came up with the backstory that Isaac was given an honorary rank as a reward for saving the lives of passengers during a shipboard emergency. Now, one of the favorite people on the show, and the highlight of the show at the beginning, was Lauren Tews. She played Julie McCoy. She had a highly publicized battle with drugs and was eventually fired from the show by the end of the 7th season. She eventually got her life straightened out, and I think she lives somewhere in the northwestern United States. At the show's inception, Aaron Spelling approached Dick Van Patten as his first choice to play Dr. Adam Bricker. He was already doing 8 is Enough, and he was unavailable. The role was then passed to Bernie Capel, who happened to be a best friend of Van Patten's. Appearing as a guest star, Van Patten played several different characters over the course of the series. You would also see a lot of guest stars that happened to be on other ABC network shows, such as Happy Days, Welcome Back Kotter, and Battlestar Galactica. In the final season of the series, a group of dancers who performed choreographed performances was introduced to the show. They were called the Love Boat Mermaids, and they were made up of a bunch of people that you probably wouldn't remember nowadays, but you loved seeing their faces back then. Only one that I know of made it to the big time, and that was Terry Hatcher. She played Amy as a mermaid. She's probably most famous for some films, but also the TV series Desperate Housewives. In March of 2006, she made some allegations that she had been abused at the age of 5 by an uncle by marriage who was later divorced from her aunt. She stated that her parents were completely unaware of what had happened to her. In 2002, she assisted the Santa Clarita County prosecutors with their indictment of this man because he went on to do this to other girls, more specifically, a female victim that was so traumatized by this that she lost her life. Hatcher has gone on to say that she feels really haunted by the thoughts of what happened to this girl. Had she told somebody back then, she felt like that this might have never happened to this young lady. I hate to end on a sour note like this, but I had to tell you this story. We do live around some pretty evil people. Go back and watch an episode of this grand series. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll continue to chase the classics.